Okay, let's start making a head cap for this cute little dude. So what I am going to do first of all is scale him up. Because in ZbrsuhCORE, if your object is too small, when you dynamesh it and stuff like that, you lose a lot of detail. So what we're going to do is go to dynamesh. Let's see how it handles being around 5. Okay, that looks fine. Nothing, we didn't lose any detail there or anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this head. I'm going to go to my move tool. Now I'm going to hold shift and smooth all of this out. I'm actually going to... Oh, are you done thinking? No, we're thinking. I'm going to lower the dynamesh on this one actually to something really low. Wow. Okay, now we're going to smooth it out. And my goal with this is to mostly get rid of these spikes. Okay, there we go. That's nice and tiny. So when you dynamesh an object, you can drag by holding control out here and it'll move your topology around. What we want to do is make it so that this hollows out the head. We want it to be, you know, thin but not too thin. There we go. And that's fine if it, you know, cuts holes in the eyes. So we have our cutter object, but before I cut it, I'm actually going to duplicate it in case I mess up. Actually lower the dynamesh resolution. Okay. Now what I do to make a head cap is I hold control and I hold shift and then I tap this and change it to the select lasso. And we're just going to mask off a point. I usually try and make a nice straight line, but I don't really want to nab that fur tuft. I don't know, maybe I do. We'll do it like this. We're going to assume that the neck hole is going to go about here. So I'm going to hold control and shift and just cut a straight line. And now I'm going to go up here and do split hidden. We're going to hide that layer. And then we want this to become a dynamesh object again, so I'm going to hold control and drag. Oh, we lost a little bit of detail there. So I'm going to undo that. Going to boost the resolution up a little bit. Control drag. We still lost a little bit of detail. Let's do 280 control drag. Okay, cool. Now we're gonna do the same thing for this piece. Just change it to 280. Now we're gonna control drag. Sweet. And now it's a little bit rough on these edges, and that's fine. We'll clean that up later. So we've now got a head and a head cap. Obviously, we still need to hollow them out. So we're going to go to this little object that we made. Remember this dude? Yeah, this is our cutter. We'll name it cutter. And I'll name this head. I'll name this head back. And I'm going to check and make sure my thing is recording. Okay. So we're going to duplicate our cutter object. We're going to tell it to be a cutter object by making it this crescent moon. We're going to duplicate our head object in case we mess up. And then in ZbrsuhCORE, in order to dynamesh, you have to merge your object on top of your cutter. So we're going to go down to geometry. If you can't see it, it's going to be, actually you should see it's going to be merge, merge down, hit OK. Now we're going to control drag in the gray area. Oh, and it looks like nothing happened, but that's because we have to turn this other object off. There we go. Nice and empty on the inside. No thoughts, head empty. Just what we want. We could smooth that out if we want by holding shift and brushing around. I'm not too fussed about it at the moment. Okay. Now for the head back piece, I'm going to pull it down to the cutter. I'm going to duplicate my cutter object, make sure it's on the second little cutter so it knows it's a cutter object. A little crescent moon. I'm going to duplicate my head back in case I mess up. And now we're going to merge the head back onto the cutter. And we're going to control drag in the gray area. We're going to hide this cutter. And it looks like it worked. And I like to bring all of my cut objects down to the bottom. Okay, we now have our head object and our head back object. So what I would do at this stage is I would make sure that the head is the size that you want it to be. You can do that by exporting it, putting it into your slicer software, and scaling it to the proper size, and then bringing it back in as an object file. We're going to pretend we did that, and we want to add some magnet catches. You can also add latches. You can get pretty complex with latches if you want, but we're going to keep it pretty simple for right now. We're going to smooth this out. We can hit the corners a little bit just to clean up those edges. So you can see it's smoothed that out by holding shift and painting. I'm going to do the same thing on the head tool. I want to be careful to make sure that I'm not smoothing any of the detail out on the front. Doesn't really matter if it's smooth in here because it's the inside. And these eyes don't really matter because we will add eye wells to that by using a sphere and cutting a sphere out of that. So I'm not worried about this. We'll do that after. So here is a cutter object, or a magnet object that I've created. And you can download this. It's like 50 or 20 cents on my Etsy shop, or you can just message me and I'll give it to you for free. This I know is 2mm by 6mm because I brought it into my slicing software and told it to be that scale. So this head is actually way too tiny. But, you know, normally I would scale the head up to the size I want, so let's do that. I'm going to turn symmetry off and center the gizmo. I'm going to scale it up by 2. Okay, and we're going to make sure we do that for the head back. Actually, I'll do it from here. There we go. Okay, that's not perfect. But should be close enough. Okay. Still too small, but I'll shrink this and pretend that that is the correct size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate my magnet. I'm going to go to deformation, and I'm going to inflate my magnet, and I want to inflate it by, I did 10, but maybe I'll do 50. Okay, cool. And what I like to do for my magnets is make them roughly angled the same as my headline. Okay, cool. And what I'm going to do is drag this up here. We're just going to make a fun little latch. I'm going to hold Control and mask this. Oh, I need to create more geometry so I can properly move this. So we're going to go to Geometry and hit Divide. Oh, I guess not Divide. Let's do Dynamesh. Okay, there we go. That works. Okay, now I'm going to mask this off. I'm going to just do that. I'm going to mask this off here. Oh, I'm going to retopologize it by holding Control and dragging. Control and drag that to select it, split the masked points, delete that created layer. And now we're going to make sure that this closes the hole. So we're going to Control click. Oops. Okay. So this funky little guy is going to hold our magnet. And you can make these as big or small as you want. What I would do is I would take my actual magnet. This is our 2mm by 6mm magnet. And I'm going to put it here. So as you can see, it still needs to be bigger, our little magnet hole, because our magnet doesn't have enough space to live in there. So we're going to make this bigger. We're going to make sure that it's flush in here. It's okay if it's not perfectly flush. I would rather have a little bit, of a gap than have the head cap not fit. Okay, now we have to cut some of this off. Control drag. Okay, sweet. So I'm going to move my magnet. Make sure that it is going to fit here. Yeah, it's nice and deep. So you would think we just want to cut that magnet right to make the hole, but we don't. We want to make sure that it is big enough for the magnet to fit. So I'm going to duplicate my magnet object. I'm going to go to Deform or Deformation, and I'm going to inflate my object. I usually do about 5, but apparently I had to do 47. Okay, pull that down just a little bit. And now we're going to make sure that this is a Dynamesh. We're going to make sure it's a cutter. We're going to duplicate it. And we're going to move it under our magnet holder. So this is our magnet holder. That's what we've made. And this is our cutter magnet. 'Make sure that it is a cutter. We're going to move it under our magnet holder. So this is our magnet holder. That's what we've made. And this is our cutter magnet. Make sure that it is a cutter. 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 Make sure that it is duplicate the magnet holder in case we mess up. We're going to merge the magnet holder onto the magnet cutter. Then we're going to control drag. We now have a cutout magnet hole. And this would look cleaner. You know, you can make a cleaner object than what I've used. But so, a fun little trick that I have learned is, you know, we've got our magnet holder and we need another one on the head cap. What I do is I just duplicate this and rotate it on the screen axis 180 degrees. And now I'm going to just pull it up. And I do want a little bit of a gap between there, because I'd rather have a little bit of a gap than have it not fit. Okay, cool. So now we have our lower magnet holder that we will fuse to the head. Oops, okay, there we go. Now I know where I'm at. So we'll fuse these together. The head and the magnet holder 1. And then we will fuse the head back to magnet holder 2. But we're going to make sure that it fits here. Ooh, just barely. So what we can do is I'm going to pull this down. And I'm pulling it down 0.3, 0.4, which means I'm going to pull this one down 0.3, 0.4. We're going to just make sure that that is completely touching. Alright, looks good. And here's our magnet holder 2. We need to make sure that it is touching. Okay. But we also don't want it to poke out too far. Let's turn on symmetry. I'm going to cut this extra by masking it off by holding Control, going down to click on Split, Split Masked, delete that one. And to close this object, I'm going to hold Control and drag. Okay. So we now have our magnet holder for the back of the head cap, and it lines up with the one that's going on the front of the head cap. So I'm going to first off save. You should be saving between merging your objects. We'll duplicate the head just in case I mess up. We'll duplicate the magnet holder in case I mess up. We will click merge. We will merge them down. Now to make sure that they are fused, I'm going to control click and drag, control and drag. It's going to think. Okay. Alright, that looks like it worked. You can tell because if you start to smooth, it'll smooth out everything. Okay, cool. Looks good. And we can clean that out if we want. You know, just kind of smooth those edges. It's on the inside of the head, so honestly nobody's really gonna mind. So now we have this all as one closed mesh. We're going to go up to the head back and duplicate it. Then duplicate our second magnet holder. We're going to hide this layer so that we can see. We are going to merge the head back down onto the magnet holder. You need to make sure that they are on the first one. This means fuse. The second one means cut. We are going to control drag so that it will dynamesh. Alright, looks like that worked. Perfect. And what some people will do is they will actually extend this all the way down, or I guess up, so that there's no gap under there, so that it's easier for the printer to print. I haven't had any issues, but it's a thing you can do. And we now have our head back and our head, and it's hollowed out, and it has a magnetic head cap. Hopefully that makes enough sense. You can also do other options, like lately what I've been doing is making, you can split it anywhere you want. So if you wanted to make the faceplate separate, you could split it like this. Oops. You know, and you could split hidden, so that you have this as the head back. Oh, it's gotta think. And then this is the head front. And then you could put the magnet in this area. That way you can still have the neck hole here. That way the face just magnets on, and you don't have to unstring the head to put the face on. You can just go, and to hollow that out, you would just, you know, I like to make a duplicate like I did at the beginning. Lower the resolution and just smooth the snot out of it. Just smooth that bad boy. And then you turn it into a cutter object, you know, making sure that you duplicate it in case you mess up, and duplicating that one in case you mess up. You can also turn on transparency mode and shrink objects. That's what I did earlier, so that you can see, make sure nothing's poking out anywhere. It's got a nice wall thickness. Oh, it's got to calculate what it's doing. But yeah, that's how I, and you want to make sure that you have enough thickness in your eye wells so that when you know, put a sphere here and cut out another eye well, like this, roughly. Oops. You want to have, you know, enough of a wall that when it prints, it's not too thin. So if this were my head and I wanted to use round eyes, I'd probably make the eyes about that size, because we want to make sure we have room for both eyes. And I would personally, where's this head layer? Okay. I would move these to cup that ball. You know, a bit like that. pull that in. But I didn't design this head, and they probably have, you know, eyes that they plan on using. They might not have to be spheres. But once you get it cut out, you can always, you know, duplicate, deformation, mirror, merge these down, make sure they're Dynamesh, turn them into a cutter object. Duplicate in case we mess up. Oops, not that one. Merge down. Drag Control to do that, you know, Boolean cut. There you go, so you know. Makes it big enough for the eye spheres. But, you know, this was to make a head cap, not the eyes, but anywho, that's what I would do. And again, you can get the magnet files on my Etsy shop for pretty cheap. I try to make them like 50 or 20 cents just to cover the listing fee, or you can just ask me, or you can make them in Tinkercad. I like to use a 2mm by 6mm disc magnet. But yeah, there you go. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have questions, let me know. All that kind of stuff.